bedposts, they softly tease. Time folds the stories we echoes rise, they call us near. Through shadowed past, the path is clear. Legend tales, the heart can hear. A world reborn in every tear.
Why do I feel so uncomfortable? I asked myself. Sitting on the bed, I looked around the room and found it strange. Even though I had lost my memory, I had thought the room would feel familiar, but it didn't. But what troubled me was the nagging feeling that I had forgotten something extremely important. I wished I could just remember that one thing. Minutes after Hajin left, I decided to take a shower. I was able to stand after sitting for a while and saw all the stuff I believed was mine in the closet. I freshened up quickly and changed into a casual pink dress I found in the wardrobe. It turned out to be too tight for me, proving that I had indeed gained a lot of weight. I had to start working out to keep my weight in check. I wore back the dress Hajin had given me at the hospital and laid on the bed. I tried so much to jog my memory, but nothing came back to me, not even a flash. I could not wait to remember everything and leave Hajin's family home, as it was obvious that no one wanted me around. I kept thinking about the whole situation with Jiwoo's pregnancy and didn't know when I slept off. After sleeping for a long time, I felt someone hugging me from the back. His hands moved to the front and began to fondle my breasts. I felt his lips on my neck and gasped, my eyes still closed as I felt shivers down my spine. Was Hajin always so romantic? I wondered as I opened my eyes. Hajin, I breathed, you came back. Baby, I missed you so much. Hearing an unfamiliar voice, I realized it wasn't Hajin and turned in fright. My eyes widened in shock when I saw Hajin's cousin. He and his fiancée had said nothing when I first arrived, but only watched silently. He was smiling lovingly at me, his eyes filled with desire. What audacity, I thought as I immediately tried to roll off the bed. However, he pulled me back, refusing to let me go. I quickly sat up and so did he. Without wasting time, I slapped him across his cheek. How dare you? I tried to get off the bed, but he suddenly grabbed my shoulders and pinned me down on the bed. He seemed so excited as he asked, when did you become so feisty? My heart began to race uncontrollably as I became very scared. I wanted to fight him off, but I didn't have the energy to do so. I felt weak. Please get off of me, I tried to reason with him. What are you trying to do? Hajin will not spare you. Relax, your husband is not coming back until tomorrow, he told me, and my eyes widened in shock. How could that be when Hajin had told me he would be back in a jiffy? Your husband asked me to take good care of you. He is currently held up at work, and I'm the only one he trusts in this house. He tried to undo the buttons of my dress as he spoke. No, get off me, I shrieked, but he covered my mouth. It's already 8 p.m. Hajin won't come back and no one else will show up for you. He tried to convince me to give in to him. Hajin had left in the afternoon. How could he not be back at 8 p.m.? Tears began to roll out of my eyes as I cried. Please stop. Please don't do this to me. He paused and stared at me in surprise. What the hell is wrong with you? You didn't beg me to stop the last time. You were the one who wanted it. I know it's been long, but we've done this so many times, and you always enjoy it. Why are you pushing me away now? My eyes blinked incredulously. Was I the type of girl to do something so disgusting and shameful? You are lying, I replied. I may have lost my memories, Woobin, but I know I would never cheat on my husband. He suddenly let go of my hands as his eyes widened in surprise. You lost your memory. He got off my body, and right at that moment, the door was pushed open. How dare you? Hajin's mother thundered. She was in the company of Jiwoo, Rail, and Jaya, Woobin's fiancé. I immediately got off the bed, wanting to explain what happened, but the woman did not give me time to do so. She charged at me, raising her hand to slap me. I quickly moved to the side, while she ended up falling face down on the bed. She got up and pointed accusing fingers at me. If Jaya had not told me what you were up to, I wouldn't have realized the extent of your shamelessness. What did my poor Hajin ever do to you? I scoffed. Woobin is literally in my room. He barged in, invaded my privacy, and tried to force himself on me, but that is my fault. Lies, Woobin yelled. Mom, Hajin asked me to come in here and that's why I did. She is lying against me. Of course, I know she is lying against you, Hajin's mom replied. Ivy, you were always a whore, and now you are even seducing your husband's cousin who tried to show you kindness. Jaya began to cry. I can't take this, Mom. She already has Hajan, why can't she be content? I looked at all of them as they threw accusations at me and began to feel dizzy. There was a heavy feeling in my heart that I could not explain, and suddenly, a ray of light passed through my eyes, and I saw myself sitting in a room filled with people. Someone stood in front of me and everyone, speaking and accusing me. I couldn't see the face of the person, nor could I understand what was being said. All I knew was that it was a lie, and it filled my heart with so much pain. It's a lie, I stood up and exclaimed, and that was it. I came back to the present, unable to make sense of what I just remembered, and right at that moment, I saw Rael standing right in front of me. I'll teach her a good lesson, Mom. She raised her hand to slap me as she spoke. However, she paused midway when a deep voice raged. What the hell is going on here? I looked up and saw Hajan standing by the door with different plastic bags in his hand. He seemed exhausted, but very angry. I realized that Jiwoo was suddenly nowhere in sight, but that was the least of my problems. I felt as though my savior had arrived and wanted to run to Hajan. However, Woobin quickly walked up to him and said, Hajan, according to your instruction, I came in here to check if she was doing okay. I was so shocked when Ivy threw herself at me and tried to seduce me. I was still trying to push her away when the rest of the family heard the noise and came in to save me from her. The moment Woobin spoke, I expected Hajan to put him in his place. However, he turned and stared at me with a look of surprise and disappointment. The happiness and relief I felt when I first saw Hajan disappeared as I wondered, does my husband not trust me? I kept staring at my husband as he walked closer to me, his eyes not leaving mine, even as he placed the bags in his hand on the floor. You must be tired from standing for so long. His eyes softened, and he cupped my face as he spoke. I was taken by surprise as I thought he doubted me as well. He led me to the bed, helping me to sit on it while everyone else watched in surprise. The moment I sat down, he turned and charged at Woobin, who was about to exit the room. His fist connected with Woobin's cheek as he punched him, forcing 4 of his teeth and a mouthful of blood out of his mouth. Harin, Hajan's mother, cried as his action was unexpected. As Woobin landed on the ground, Hajan picked him up by the collar of his shirt and raged, How dare you? I had thought wrong. Hajan trusted me so much that he didn't even need me to speak before believing my innocence. Harin ran to him, holding his hand as she cried, What has come over you? Woobin is your cousin, and that bitch you call a wife was the one who tried to seduce him. How can you attack your own blood? Stay out of this, Hajan thundered, his anger palpable. At this point, Jaya ran to Hajan and held his arm as she cried, Please don't hurt my fiancé anymore. He is innocent. Before coming in here, he told me he wanted to check on Ivy to see how she was doing. He was only following your orders. Who would have known that she would throw herself at him so shamelessly? The moment the question left Jaya's lips, Hajan covered her face with a slap, sending her staggering backward. She held her cheek as her face contorted in pain, crying profusely while Hajan seethed with rage. If anyone dares to accuse my wife, I will not spare them. You are going overboard, his mom yelled and began to push him. He scoffed, You all have so much faith in Woobin. Well, I have just as much faith in my wife. Let's see who gets disappointed today. I bit my lip as I watched them, wondering what I would have done if Hajan had supported his family against me. Look up, everyone. There's a camera in my room. Hajan pointed at a corner in the room, just by the wall clock, and we all looked up. Pushing a weak Woobin to the ground, Hajan took out the camera and began to play the video file for everyone to watch. His mom gasped in surprise, and hearing the things Woobin had said only made Hajan more upset. Leaving the camera with his mom, he walked back to Woobin, picked him up by his collar, and asked, Is this what my Ivy suffered at your hands all this time? I am going to kill you today. Please, Woobin cried. I'm sorry, Hajan. I had no idea that Ivy had lost her memories. Ivy has lost her memory. Rael was the one who asked, her face showing how shocked she was by the revelation. I promise you, she has always thrown herself at me, Woobin insisted. I have never tried to force her. She has always been the one to make the move. Hajan scoffed. Even now, you still dare to slander my wife. I swear I'm telling the truth, Woobin groaned. Without another word, Hajan grabbed Woobin by his collar and began to take him away. As they all followed behind Hajan, I was unable to take a step. Woobin was insisting that things had happened in the past between us, and I always initiated it. How could I ever do something so despicable? And he had been genuinely shocked when I revealed that I had lost my memory. I didn't understand what was going on, and I was tired of the drama of Hajan's family members. I also could not help but wonder why Hajan had put a camera in my room. Although it turned out to favor me, what about our privacy? A lot of things did not make sense to me, and more than anything else, I wished I could regain all my memories. That way, I would understand why they were all acting strangely. Meanwhile, I was touched by how much confidence Hajan had in me. Even before watching the video, he had taken my side. As my husband, he was perfect, and I felt lucky to have a man like him by my side during such a dark period of my life. Please, you need to help Woobin. Hajan is trying to drown him. You are the only one he would listen to. Jaya ran back into my room, knelt down, and pleaded desperately. Her face was streaked with tears, and a clear handprint, which was evidence of Hajan's slap, stood out on her face. It was ironic that they had all been ready to eat me alive earlier. However, now, she was begging for Woobin. Why was she not upset by her fiancé's infidelity? I got up and walked out of the room without saying a word to her. I went straight to the pool, and true to her words, Hajan was inside, trying to drown Woobin. Please don't do this, Hajan, his mom kept begging him. Woobin is the only child of my sister. Please spare his life. Hajan paid no heed to their words and continued to shove Woobin into the water until I said, Please, Hajan. Everyone turned and stared at me, including Hajan, who immediately stopped what he was doing. Jaya stared at me with an expression of gratitude. However, I had only stopped Hajan because I did not want him to commit murder and have his cousin's blood on his hands. Still dragging Woobin, who was barely conscious, he got out of the pool and flung him to the ground. His mom tried to help Woobin up, but Hajan thundered, Stop right there, Mom. I am not done with him. Hajan seemed like a wounded beast at this point, and even I was surprised. Walking closer to Woobin, who was shivering, Hajan squatted and held Woobin's wrist. You held my ivy with this hand, right? Placing Woobin's palm down, Hajan stood up and stepped on it with so much force, breaking his phalanges. Woobin cried out in pain, and Hajan finally let go of him. He walked toward me and stood an inch away as he asked softly, Are you okay? I nodded, and almost immediately, he carried me bridal-style back into the house. His clothes were wet, but for some unknown reason, being carried by him made me feel warm. I kept looking at his face while he carried me until we were back in our bedroom. He laid me gently on the bed and knelt on the floor beside me as he stroked my hair and asked once again, Are you okay? Once again, I nodded. I am very sorry about the camera, he told me. It's usually turned off, but I was worried that my family would make trouble for you, and that was why I turned it on. I'm sorry for invading your privacy. I smiled and reached out my hand to touch his face. It's okay, Hajan. You trusted me even before seeing the evidence. I am blessed to have a husband like you. He smiled. Of course. I will always support you, no matter who is on the other side, because you mean the world to me. He kissed my forehead before standing up. Let me take a quick shower, okay? I nodded, and he went to the bathroom. He came back a few seconds later with only a towel around his waist and added, There's food in one of the bags. You can eat now if you are very hungry. Otherwise, I will feed you once I'm done bathing. I sat up once he came out, staring at his well-toned body with a smile on my face. Just as he walked away, I had another episode of flashbacks. A man stood in front of me with a white towel around his waist. Even though I could not see his face, I knew without a doubt that it was Hajan. He held my hand and took me with him to the bathroom, and we hugged. The memory made me so happy, and my face turned red as I imagined how it would feel to be in the bathroom with Hajan. He was my husband. He loved me so much, and I was crazy about him. That seemed like a perfect moment. An idea formed in my mind, and I got off the bed. Although I felt a little shy, I still took off all my clothes and began to walk naked to the bathroom to meet him. I stood outside the door, reminded myself that Hajan was my husband, and gave myself a boost in confidence. Pushing the door open, I walked into the bathroom, and Hajan, who had his back to me, instantly turned off the shower and turned. His eyes widened in shock as he gasped, Ivy. Although I had no idea why he was so shocked to see me, I was happy to relive a special moment of us that I had forgotten. I took a step closer to him as I said, Hajan, I may have lost my memories, but my feelings for you are stronger than ever. I love you so much. He continued to stare at me in surprise, while I wrapped my arms around his body and hugged him tightly. Quick pause, if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure you're subscribed to Blasian Folktales. That way, you won't miss the next episode or the twist that's coming. We post new Blasian Folktales and series episodes, and And subscribing keeps you locked in for every reveal, every secret, and every moment that makes these stories special. It only takes a second. Tap subscribe, turn on the bell, and you're good to go. All right, no more interruptions. Let's jump right back into the story.
My Ivy, I'm sorry that I was too busy and neglected you. If I had loved you as you deserved, I would have known about everything wrong my family did to you. I regretted everything and wished I could turn back the hands of time. Inside my bathroom, as I closed my eyes, I let the water from the shower drain off the anger I felt. The thought that my Ivy may have been assaulted by Woobin when she was alive made me extremely upset. But I knew I had to control my anger. She wouldn't want me to become a murderer for her sake. The Ivy in my bedroom was just like my late Ivy. She was unique and special, and I had to find a way to keep my distance from her to avoid regrets later. I had only just met her, and despite knowing she wasn't the real deal, once she stood in front of me, I got all mushy and muddle-headed. The desire to hold her close, caress her, and kiss all her fears away was growing more than I wanted to admit. I was still lost in thought when the door of my bathroom was pushed open. In the past, Ivy liked to join me whenever I was in the bathroom. As a creature of habit, I had made the mistake of leaving the door unlocked. Turning and seeing Ivy stark naked, standing in front of me, I gasped in shock. My Ivy was the only girl I had ever had sex with, as I never paid attention to women before I met her and focused all my attention on my company. After she died, I stayed celibate without a desire to get close to any girl. However, seeing the naked Ivy in front of me gave me a hard-on. I wanted to ask her to leave, to tell her that it was wrong for her to be there, but I could barely make out any words. As she spoke, I didn't pay attention to her words because, at that moment, my eyes traveled down to her full and succulent breasts, noticing her hardened nipples. Despite not wanting to, I traveled lower, biting my lip as my gaze fell on the curve of her heart-shaped pussy. She was so hot. I gulped and looked up, catching her eyes. The way she stared at me, even my Ivy never showed such deep emotion in her eyes. Why was she staring at me like that? No, I had to push her away. It was going to be the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was for the best. I love you so much. I had just opened my mouth to force myself to speak when those words came out of her pretty mouth and filled my ears. How could she be in love with me? I was still trying to assimilate the last 5 words she had said to me when she threw herself into my arms and hugged me, driving me crazy. Her body pressed against mine was so warm, and as she held me tightly, I felt her heart racing, just as mine was. I lost control at that moment, and all I could suddenly think about was having sex with her. I cupped her face as my lips crashed against hers. It had been more than 2 years since I last tasted a woman's lips. There was a tiny voice, deep inside, that told me to stop because I was wrong, but I shoved it aside. Lifting her, I walked out of the bathroom, and a few strides later, her back was touching my bed. Mounting her, I captured her lips again, kissing her as though my life depended on it. She was panting and out of breath when my lips found her breasts. I fondled and sucked her nipples as her soft moans excited me beyond control. Hajun, she moaned out my name excitedly, and for some reason, her voice seemed like a wake-up call, forcing me to snap my head up. My eyes caught her beautiful midnight dark pools, a stark contrast to the hazel eyes Ivy had when she was alive. Seeing how much love and trust her eyes held as she stared at me, I realized at that moment that I was a monster. This is not right, I gruffed and got off the bed, looking away from her. I knew this action must have left her confused and frustrated, but I could live with that. Hajun, is there a problem? Her voice had a tinge of surprise, and I let out the only lie I knew made sense. I'm sorry I got carried away, baby. The doctor warned me not to get intimate with you until you regained your memories. I'm truly sorry. A few seconds of awkward silence passed between us before I heard her voice again. It's okay, Hajun. I didn't know the doctor said that. I know you really want me to be well. I want the same thing too. I'll be right back. I spoke more calmly before heading back to the bathroom. My heart was still racing when I hit the shower, opting for cold water. I was fully jolted back to my senses and felt relieved that I had been able to stop myself. After bathing, I came out with a towel tied around my waist and saw her still lying on the bed. At this time, though, she was fully dressed and looked different from the naked woman I saw earlier. She had curled her body into a ball and closed her eyes. Was she asleep? I felt even more guilty when I recalled that she hadn't eaten. A few minutes later, I had her food in a tray after wearing my pajamas. I tapped her gently and she opened her eyes. "It's time to eat, baby," I told her. She sat up and smiled, hugging her knees as she asked, "Will you feed me?" "Of course, if you want that," I replied. She seemed excited that I agreed and kept staring at me as I fed her. A while later, she said she was full and could not eat anymore. I gave her the medicine the doctor had prescribed and afterward sat beside her on the bed. "The food tasted unfamiliar to me, but it was delicious," she confessed. "I can't remember it because of my lost memories." I turned and stared at her as she spoke and found myself very curious. What type of girl was she before her accident? How did she end up with a bullet in her shoulder? Was her family desperately searching for her? There was just so much I wanted to know about her, but it wasn't possible. "I've had flashes of my past," she revealed out of the blue. "I've seen myself in a wedding dress. I was so happy on the day we got married." My eyes widened in surprise as I wondered, is she married? She seemed quite young. Perhaps that was why such a possibility did not cross my mind. "What else did you see?" I asked, wanting to be sure before jumping to conclusions. "I saw us in the bathroom making love," she revealed shyly. "The both of us?" I asked in disbelief. She chuckled. "Well, I couldn't see your face, but it had to be you. Who else could it be?" I nodded. "Right, I remember it too." She leaned her head on my shoulder as she suddenly asked, "Do you love me?" Turning my face to look at her again, I smiled. "Of course, I love you with all my heart." She nodded. "I knew that. I just wanted you to say it again. I love you too, Hajan. With you in my life, what more could I ask for?" I continued to stare at her until she fell asleep with her head still leaning against my shoulder. I laid her on the bed, covered her with a duvet and whispered, "I am very sorry," before walking out of the room.
In the morning, when I opened my eyes, my husband's face was the first thing I saw. I didn't know when I fell asleep last night, but opening my eyes to see him staring at me had to be one of the best things in the world. "Good morning, Princess," he beamed. "Good morning, Prince," I replied, and we both smiled. We stared at each other silently, and I recalled last night, when he had walked away from me despite how difficult it was for him. The fact that he put my well-being ahead of his sexual desires made me feel very safe with him. I moved closer and hugged him, placing my head on his chest as I asked, "Have I told you that you are extremely handsome?" He laughed. "You've always thought so. However, my looks are nothing compared to yours. For me, you are the most beautiful girl in the world." "Sweet like honey" was the exact phrase to describe all his words to me. How could a man be so perfect for me? I continued hugging him, enjoying how pleasantly he smelled and refusing to let go of him, until I remembered that he had to go to work. After hugging him for more than 40 minutes, I rolled away from him and got up. "Sorry, I forgot that you have to go to work." He shook his head. "No, I took the day off to care for you. I want to spend today with you, so tell me all the things you would like to do." I thought about it and said, "I would like to wash my hair and I would like to cook for you too. Unfortunately, I don't remember how to do the latter." He got off the bed and said confidently, "I must say, you are in luck because this guy right here is such an excellent cook. Baby, I've got you covered." My day unexpectedly turned out to be fun-filled. Hajan helped me wash my hair and taught me how to cook. His mom was surprised when she walked into the kitchen and saw us cooking together and having so much fun while at it. She walked away in silence, as it seemed she was still upset because Hajan had almost sent her precious nephew to the afterlife last night. Later in the evening, Hajan took me out after I told him that I felt like having ice cream. I was very excited since I had no memory of ever going out with him. He treated me lovingly, listened whenever I spoke, and was gentle with me. Unfortunately, he revealed that he would have to go to work the next day. I knew that I would be bored and likely have to face his troublesome family, so I tried to make the most of the time we had together. After having ice cream, I told him that I wanted us to go on a stroll, and he obliged without hesitation. We went to the park, walking hand in hand and feeding our eyes. I was so happy. Once it was 6, Hajan asked that we return home because I had to eat dinner and take my medicine. He drove us back home, and the moment we got out of the car, his phone began to ring. "I need to take this call and it might take a while. Go ahead, and I'll meet you in our bedroom in a bit," Hajan told me. I nodded, gave him a quick peck, and walked into the house. Just like yesterday, I met Rael, sitting on the couch, but this time she was alone. She got up and stared at me condescendingly, but I ignored her and proceeded toward my bedroom. "Stop right there," she ordered, and I scoffed. I was about to take another step when she added, "Mom wants to talk to you. She's been waiting for you in her bedroom upstairs." I didn't want to go because I had the feeling they were up to no good. After Hajin beat up Wubin last night, they had all avoided me. Jaya was nowhere to be found, and Rael only spoke to me when it seemed I was alone. On second thoughts, I had nothing to fear. I was stronger than yesterday and my legs were okay. Moreover, Hajin was just outside. What could go wrong? I sighed and began making my way to the stairs, but Rael quickly approached and spun me to face her. I rolled my eyes. "What now?" "I know your memory loss is fake," she gritted. "No matter how much you act like a saint now, it won't change the fact that you are a bitch, one who would not be by my brother's side for long. I will make sure of it. Mark my words, Ivy, I will unmask you before Hajin." After speaking, she turned and walked out while I shook my head and proceeded to climb the stairs. Just as I got to the top of the stairs, I realized there was someone behind me and turned. When I saw that it was Jiwoo, I recalled how Hajin had said he wasn't responsible for her pregnancy and smiled. I was amazed at her shameless desperation. Deciding to ignore her too, I turned my back on her and was about to take the next step when she said, "You must think you have successfully stolen Hajin from me, but you are about to fall flat on your face." Turning to face her, I scoffed. "You know, for someone whose lies will be exposed in 2 days, you sure have a big mouth. You should worry about what Hajin will do to you once it is proven that the child in your belly is not his." She smiled and took a step closer to me as she whispered, "But how can Hajin discover the truth when you have already killed his baby?" I furrowed my brows. "What are you talking about?" "Ivy," I heard Hajin's mom's voice and turned to see her coming toward me. However, Jiwoo suddenly tapped my arm and cried out, "Ivy, no." I turned my attention back to her and was shocked to see her tumbling down the stairs while crying out in a loud voice. "Ivy, how could you?" Hajin's mom cried, and she ran toward me. Meanwhile, both Hajin and Rael ran into the house and stared at the scene in surprise. As I stared at Jiwoo, who was now lying at the foot of the stairs, bleeding, I found myself unable to take another step as a light suddenly flashed through my eyes, and I became dizzy. My legs gave out, and I found myself tumbling down the stairs as well. Finally, I began to remember, and this time, the faces and the voices were clear. "Did you push him?" Yeren, my best friend, asked me. "He is dead," a police officer announced while touching my husband. "You are under arrest." My hands were cuffed. "She killed him," my best friend testified falsely against me in court. "This court finds the accused guilty of first-degree murder and sentences her to life imprisonment with hard labor on the Chungwal Island prison." The judge condemned me. "Your husband is alive," my sister Seoyeon told me in prison. "If this is my fate, I will fight it until my last breath." These were my thoughts before I plunged into the Chungwal Sea. I remembered it all. "Your name is Ivy Kim and you are my wife," Hajin told me. It was all a lie. I wasn't Ivy. I was Ileana, and I finally remembered everything. As I lay on the ground, unable to move, I heard faint voices right before darkness engulfed me.
I had just gotten off the phone when I heard a scream. It wasn't Ivy's voice, but I knew it had something to do with her. My family was causing trouble again. I ran inside, and Rael, who had just walked out, turned and rushed back in as well. What I saw wasn't what I expected, but at first I was relieved. Ivy stood at the top of the stairs unharmed. I could breathe again for just a second. But then I saw her face. Something wasn't right. She looked lost, confused, like she was in some kind of pain that had nothing to do with her body. I waited, thinking she would come down the stairs on her own, but she didn't move. Then my mom's scream broke through the silence. Jiwoo was bleeding. She was losing the baby. I scoffed. This was typical Jiwoo. Desperate, manipulative. Girls like her would do anything to get what they wanted, even sacrifice the innocent. There was no maternal love in her, just selfish greed. I glanced away from Ivy for only a second. When I looked back, she was tumbling down the stairs. My heart stopped. I sprinted towards her, cursing myself for not getting her down sooner. If my mom and Rael hadn't been at the bottom, busy with Jiwoo, I might have believed they'd pushed her. "Ivy," I shouted her name as I knelt beside her crumpled form. She was unresponsive. My mom and sister had pulled Jiwoo out of the way when Ivy was falling. their voices rising in panic as they called for an ambulance. But I couldn't wait for help. Ivy's pulse was weak, her skin pale, and blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. "This is all Ivy's fault," my mom spat. She pushed Jiwoo out of jealousy and threw herself down the stairs to avoid getting caught. I ignored her, scooped Ivy into my arms, and headed for the door. Nothing else mattered at that moment. Ivy needed help. However, I paused at the door and looked back at Jiwoo. She wasn't innocent in what had happened. No, I couldn't let her get away with what she'd done. "Bring her to my car," I ordered. "I'll take her to the hospital too." My mother, surprisingly obedient, helped Rail carry Jiwoo into the car. I strapped Ivy into the passenger seat, carefully adjusting her so she could rest as comfortably as possible. My mother and sister climbed into the back with Jiwoo, and I sped toward the hospital, the tension in the car suffocating. 40 minutes later, I sat beside Ivy's hospital bed, holding her hand. Guilt gnawed at me. It was all my fault. I had dragged her into a mess she didn't deserve, a nightmare she never asked to be part of. "She's going to be fine," the doctor told me. "She fainted from the shock and the cut on her head is just a scratch. She was lucky, it could have been much worse. Let her rest and she'll wake up soon." I thanked the doctor and left her room, heading straight for Jiwoo's. My mom and Rail had gone home to change their bloody clothes, leaving Jiwoo alone with the doctors. "Did you do what I asked?" I said as I entered the room. The doctor handed me the test results. "Yes, you're not the father of the baby." "I knew that already," I replied. "I just needed proof for someone else." "The baby didn't make it," the doctor added quietly. I wasn't surprised. She expected that outcome, I said flatly. She used that baby like a pawn in her twisted game. I clenched my jaw, my voice cold. "I want her to get a hysterectomy." The doctor looked at me, shocked. "But she's unconscious. She hasn't given her consent and—" "I don't care," I interrupted sharply. "If she treats Bobby's like something to be manipulated and discarded, then she doesn't deserve to be a mother." He hesitated, but after a moment he gave a resigned nod. "I'll prepare her for surgery." Once the procedure was over, I returned to Ivy's ward. She was awake now, staring out the window. She looked so distant, so far away from me. "Ivy," I called softly. She turned at the sound of my voice, her gaze locking onto mine. But something had shifted. Her eyes weren't the same, were cold, detached. It was as if a wall had been built between us, and I knew in that moment something had changed. The woman I had briefly come to know was gone.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like, share and comment below.